What is going on, everybody? Chase on Two Wheels here for a video that we have been waiting a really long time for. Today is the build finale of Wrecked Bike Rebuild Season 5, aka internally the CBR Nightmare. So guys, today we are gonna get a phenomenal look at all three of our CBRs that we are now done building. But before we do that, we have to talk about how we got them to this point first. Now, if you guys are new to Wrecked Bike Rebuild, in all the seasons past, our seasons typically last around 12 months. Now, we had 3 bikes this time, and a regular season is 1 bike. This one has lasted a little bit longer. We introduced this CBR 1000 back on the channel on April 21st, 2020. For you people bad at math, it's been more than 12, and it's been more than 24 months since we started this season, so we've got a lot of stuff to talk about. So guys, since it's been so long that this season has been going on, we realize it's probably been incredibly difficult to keep up with every single episode for all 3 motorcycles. Because of that, for a build finale video, we thought it would make sense to go over in quick succession what it took to get each of these motorcycles from the wrecked bikes that we bought to the finalized motorcycles you see behind me. So in today's video, we're gonna quickly run you guys through the builds of every single one of these. Now, we're gonna do it extremely fast today. We don't wanna waste a lot of time. We're gonna have playlist links in the description down below. If you wanna watch the full episodes of every single one of these, there's gonna be 3 playlists, 1 for each motorcycle. Before we jump into this video, we gotta let you guys know this beautiful thing, the CBR 1000, does have a home already. That was picked a while ago. The 2 bikes that are still up for grabs are our CBR 300 over here and our CBR 600 over there. You can still win these by going to WBRGarage.com, and for the rest of this season, if you sign up, we're giving you guys 2 times the amount of entries. So you sign up for $5, you get 10 entries every single month. It's the best deal you can get on the internet, which is a lie, but it's okay. So guys, without further ado, we want to get into this, and I think we should get started with our baby CBR 300. Let's see how we took a $300 motorcycle and turned it into a pretty dope looking street tracker. Our CBR 300 turned street tracker. Now, you'd be forgiven for thinking this bike was an easy build, even considering the fact that we purchased it with a blown engine. Fortunately for us, Honda ended up footing the bill for a remanned power plant after discovering an open recall. Lucky breaks aside, sure, anyone could rip off a few fairings, source the appropriate CB300 parts for a fat bar swap, slap on an aero exhaust, and remove a few tabs here and there to get something similar, but that wasn't enough for Brian, who dreamed up this attainable everyday street tracker. Stock geometry was changed when we upped the wheel size to fit the traditional 19s. Oh yeah, did I mention we had to reach out to Warp 9 for help when it came to figuring out where to even start with the 300's wheel situation. I cannot stress enough how much having them as a resource helped out. One-off components were made to incorporate the number plate, seat, tail section, and kickstand. Remember those oversized wheels? Apparently, increased wheel diameter can cause excessive lean to the point where we didn't feel comfortable giving the bike away without making an alteration. Just in case you were wondering, that kickstand was made specific for this bike by our machinist, Judd. Come to think of it, Judd made all the custom components for the 300. The number card, the bracket for said number card, the structure under the seat so that it sits level, even the lighting situation is thanks to the handiwork of our master level machinist. After all that customization, we couldn't just leave the colors alone. Seeing as this bike was already loud enough visually as well as audibly thanks to that aero exhaust, we figured a gloss black body and bronze frame would pair well with those Warp 9 wheels I mentioned earlier. Realistically, we know this CBR 300 probably won't ever see a day in the dirt or kick out the rear wheel to send it around a track, but then again, most leader bikes never see a closed course. When it comes to the Street Tracker 300, we weren't really worried about making sense. This was simply to see what we could and couldn't make. So guys, now you can see, if you take a CBR 300 and basically strip everything off of it, you get that, plus the 19-inch wheels. Now let's talk about a very bright, very specific track bike. Our CBR 600 and Diamond in the rough. Emphasis on the rough. When we got the call about this last addition to the Season 5 lineup, we hadn't lost sight of the fact that we were already 2 bikes deep, but we couldn't pass up on the opportunity to round out the field. Even if it did have 40,000 miles on the clock, however, it was in running condition, so there's a plus. Not long after taking ownership of our uncut gem, we set out to start tearing it down. In some regards, we realized how lucky we had gotten with an undented tank and undamaged frame. However, we also started to realize how dirty the bike was. Now, looking back, we should have probably put together that a dirty bike is an untouched bike, and if you aren't touching your bike, you are definitely not servicing your bike. This is another time we lucked out, because even though there may have been gaps in the service history, there wasn't anything we couldn't bring back into spec without completely tearing the motor down. At this point, we knew we had crazy and exciting projects in the works for Season 5, but we couldn't help but shake that feeling that we were missing something just for fun. Thus, we landed on the idea of a track bike build. Given the fact that CBR 600s are already great track day tools, we started to plan out just what we would like to see on an everyday rider's track bike. Rather than going back to stock controls, we opted for adjustable rear sets from Vortex and adjustable halo levers from Driven Racing. For the brakes, we upgraded the 08 reservoirs to these sick Rizomas. Then, just to make sure you can hear the bike in the pack blast down the straights, we went with a Yoshimura RS5, which sounds amazing, might I add. With all these goodies though, we couldn't just be bolting them onto a tired chassis. No, we had to have our CBR 600's frame powder coated so it didn't fade into the background. At this point, everything was shaping up for our track bike to be an absolutely stunning piece, and that was without fairings yet. Good thing we have monster fairings on speed dial. Now, there was a little back and forth as to whether we should go with something low-key, since the bike was meant to serve double duty, but that was quickly put to bed after remembering we build dream bikes. Forget the solid colors, don't let design elements get lost in one another. We can keep the stock graphics because, let's be honest, Honda knocked them out of the park, but let's have them stand on their own. For us, the beauty shots speak for themselves. There is no mistaking this bike for something that rolled off the line amongst the thousands of other 2008 CBRs. This 600 stands apart, and there will be no mistaking your ride when walking through the paddock. Alright guys, so that's our CBR 600, and now, if you couldn't tell by the color, my pride and joy of this entire season, the motorcycle that I had an idea for what I wanted this thing to look like from the time before we got it, the CBR 1000 Cafe Fighter? Now, out of all 3 Season 5 giveaway bikes, our CBR 1000 came to us in what we thought was the best condition and with 20,000 miles on the odometer at that. Now, don't get me wrong, the bike had a lived-in feel and the aftermarket seat had seen more than its fair share of days in the brutal southern sun, but nothing a blown paycheck and a weekend's worth of elbow grease couldn't fix, right? Much to our dismay, that ideology faded away the second we turned the key and found out that the motor was on its last leg. No. Really. The longer we ran it, the worse it got, until the point we didn't feel safe turning it back on. Without missing a beat, we tore into the bike to get down to the source of this obviously terrible noise coming from the motor, and had the scare of our lives when we came across a message reading, "No oil," across painter's tape on the fuel cell. Our souls left our bodies on that one, and quickly returned when we found that the dipstick was in fact not dry. Whew! Glad that worked out. Wait. Is that oil filter empty? Goodbye, good feeling. The further we went into the motor, the more we realized how much carnage lay in the path ahead of us. The oil pump was shot. The clutch plates had exploded. Metal was everywhere it wasn't supposed to be. And to top it all off, at the very end, we found out the reason for the knocking noise in the motor. Turns out the bearing for the connecting rod of cylinder 2 was broken. Nothing a quick order of Revzilla couldn't fix, right? Nevertheless, we pushed on to rebuild the engine entirely while making tasteful modifications to better suit our race replica turned cafe-esque Street Fighter. After all, we were already in the thick of it, so why not push the envelope to go further than we have before? We sent the head out for port and polish work to flow more air so that we could take advantage of the new cams. Then we threw caution to the wind by ditching the stock Era and went with a Palotex front fairing that was originally meant for a Ducati for an unmistakable silhouette. Also, I'm not sure how many of you guys remember this small detail or not, but the headlight we stuffed into the Palotex fairing came off of an 80s Triumph and is held in place by another custom bracket made by the national treasure himself, Judd. Thanks to our body guy, we were able to pair this one-off tail to add to the Cafe Fighter feel. Our CBR 1000 was slowly taking shape, and we were turning and burning through the reassembly process all the way up to our first startup where we thought everything was fine. Until we noticed what seemed like a miss or fouled plug. After already dealing with the reality of a washed-up engine to start out with, you could cut the tension with a knife during the filming of this episode. Brian even left early that day to wrestle with the decision of pulling the motor or fighting with it in the frame. Yeah, not the turn of events you want after a season like this. Eventually, we did come to the decision to pull the motor, and good thing too. A valve keeper had ejected itself from the spring collet, allowing the valve to freely interact with the piston. We knew this wasn't a good thing to start with, but after a quick explanation from Brian, we learned that the indentions caused from said valve to piston interaction would cause hot spots on the piston, which would lead to an eventual hole being burned through it. Not the best for high hopes and high compression, if you ask me. Along the journey that was Season 5, this dream bike was every bit of a nightmare. Between waiting for parts, figuring out finishing details, and then, with the finish line in sight, a nearly catastrophic failure from an engine that had already been disassembled. It was like looking at a summit that never seemed to grow closer, but the same couldn't be said about where we had started. In the time since starting the CBR 1000, we had moved into a new shop, added to the team, and watched the world get back to normal after the cluster that was 2020 and 2021. We had no choice but to dig in and finish strong. I promise you, nothing was sweeter than the second startup, except clicking it into gear for the first time. Did I say first time? I mean second time after the clutch plates got stuck together.
Brakes are bled, fluids are filled, headlights aimed, cooling fan is fixed.
Whoa! My God! Turn it off.
Is it still spinning? That first click, sometimes the clutch sticks.
Burn out! Woo!
Last but not least, we had the dyno tune for the bike, which, true to form, the CBR 1000 came with its own set of challenges, but it was all made worth it when we were able to hear the motor scream from the outside of that dyno enclosure for the first time. To the winner of the CBR 1000 that has already been announced, thank you for your patience. I know you're going to love it. Sorry in advance to your neighbors, and may we suggest gifting earplugs for the next holiday season. And we hear the loops are really nice. Alrighty guys, there you go. It has been 2.5 years of our lives trying to get to this point, and I could not express to you guys how happy I am to be on the other side of this build. Hopefully this video is helpful for you guys to get a kind of general idea of what we had to go through for every one of these motorcycles, on top of what was happening in the world throughout the last couple of years that has made it super fun to build motorcycles, 3 of them. Anyways, we massively appreciate all the support you guys have given us. We know we have all drudged through this process together. Looking here and looking back on the motorcycles that we built, I can't help but be like super stoked. This is the build finale, meaning the motorcycles are done. We have some awesome content planned to make with these motorcycles for the rest of the year, highlighting them and showing everybody all the cool stuff we did on these motorcycles that we're gonna be releasing every Tuesday moving forward. We have a lot of content to make on these things so we can give them away at the end of the year. Again, if you guys want to support the show or win either of these 2 motorcycles, you can go to WBRGarage.com, get double the entries, and potentially be one of our winners that we will be picking at the end of the year. We will be picking at the end of the year. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, make sure to hit the like button, subscribe for motorcycle content, go support us over on WBRGarage.com, and we'll see you guys on the next video where I'm riding that thing. Maybe. I don't know if that's the next one. It's one of them. We have a lot of them. Holy shit, I'm excited. Bye.